Okay, so we're gonna do a brief little lesson on how to really hold down Kesa Gatame, how to really put the crush on somebody. The way I like to start my Kesa Gatame hold is I get my knee way up close in here, up underneath his armpit, almost like I'm gonna hold Kata Gatame. And when I hitch him up, I hook really deep with both hands. And when I finally put it on, I pull real tight and I swing my leg through ballistically. And if you'll notice a couple points, whenever I swing my leg through, it kind of torques his body up a little bit. That gives me a slight advantage. And if you notice, his shoulder's coming up off the mat a little bit. Most of his best escapes for Kesa involve him turning into me. And if I keep this shoulder up off the mat, I'm making that angle just a little bit more severe, and it's giving me a slight advantage. Now you'll notice, I like to come over and cut my thigh with my hand. Some guys want to hold here. You can feed and hold gi across his face. It's a nice way to smother him. They're all good. The key is I want to keep his head off the mat, and I want to keep his head controlled, because if he can pull this arm off his head, that gives him easy access to the backdoor escape, and he can take my back. The other element that I like to focus on, why I like to get deep when I pull this in, is I want to keep this hand high up in my armpit. If he can work this hand low down to my elbow or below, he can feed it, he can break this loose and start pushing on my face, or he can actually armbar me. So whenever I feed it up here, I hold it tight, and it keeps that hand trapped up there. Now, if you take a look at my posture, a lot of times when people are feeding this arm, they'll kind of roll this shoulder back, and that makes it real easy for them to topple me backwards. So I like to keep this rolled forward. At the moment, I'm holding what we call a high Kesa. It's a little more upright. It's mobile, puts more pressure on his chest. If he wraps his left hand around, he might start messing with my face. I can crush it down. This is a low Kesa. The pressure's a little more on his head. It allows me to protect my face and prevent him from pushing back on me. Now, if you'll notice, whenever I hold this in my legs, I want to get them out as wide as possible. This gives me my widest base and it protects my legs. Some people will hold a leg up like this, and it does give you some advantage if you're trying to drive on him, or you can sort of wave it out to get counterbalance if he's trying to hold you. But I wouldn't advise holding it long term this way, because it creates sort of a pocket here in my hip. It makes it easy for him to turn in and control this leg with one of his. He hooks it, but if I have it flat, it almost pops out on its own. And also, if his arms are long enough, he can reach around when my leg's up like this and grab cloth on that pant leg, and he can control this leg and affect some cradle type escapes. So I like to keep it flat like this. Whenever I decide to really put the pressure on him, I'm just lifting up my hip a little bit and letting it slide out. And one way to tell if you're doing this right, if Derek will hum for me. When you hear his voice change, you know you're putting it in good. If you'll notice, my toes turn in and dig into the mat. This is actually a fairly unique judo element. If you look at sambo and wrestling, they'll still hold a position like this a lot, but most of the time they're using the blade of their foot, and I suspect it's because they're allowed to use shoes. But like on tatami, you can see with bare feet you don't get a lot of traction, but when I dig in with my toes, I can push quite a bit. It gives me traction to move around or drive into it. And whenever he starts trying to turn into me, all I have to do is I keep affecting that same motion. I get deep, swing my front leg through, and it lets me lock the hold back up. And that's how you crush people with Kesa Gatame.